Kore Mwapendika, and welcome to Africa Good Morning, the show that keeps you up to date with the latest news in Africa and beyond. My name is Glenora Shipura, joined by Diana Master.
Good morning, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. You know, I want to find a recipe for sleep.
For sleep?
Yes. Like, how do you sleep 8 full hours without interruption?
Well, you could... I don't know.
Is there one?
No, there is one. I'm just not sure I can say it on air. But do come to me, after this, and then I'll give you some hints and some tips. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's get into what you can expect in today's broadcast. The death toll in an investigation linked to a Kenyan cult that practiced starvation to quote-unquote meet Jesus Christ has exceeded 400. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune began a state visit to China on Monday, and in a surprise announcement, Eskom said that the utility and its former chief operating officer, Jan Oberholzer, would part ways by mutual agreement. We'll also be giving you news from Zambia with Mike Sichula later on in the show. Stick around, we'll be back with our top stories right after this break.
Welcome to Active Kids, a daily TV show that sparks creativity, learning, and fun for young minds. With exciting activities and lessons, Active Kids inspires curiosity and a love for learning.
New face to the
115.
The perfect mix of play and education. Don't miss out on the fun. Tune into Active Kids on NTV every weekday at 10 o'clock and let the adventure begin.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master. Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Today is Tuesday, the 18th of July, and here are your top stories. The year 2023 has so far not been so good, one for Africa. Now, conflict has erupted in Sudan, deepened in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and spread southward from the Sahel. Extreme weather, often attributed to climate change, has triggered devastating droughts and floods in places like Kenya and South Sudan, deepening poverty. Many African economies are struggling under massive debt, but the head of the African Development Bank prefers to focus on the continent's promise, notably how to better harness its assets from its massive natural resources to its large and young workforce to fight climate change, invest in sustainable development and green and grow economies. The bank's president, Akinwumi Adesina, said he has been pushing to revalue the countries based on their natural capital. According to him, this is how we are going to get a lot of capital going into Africa, adding that by the greening of African economies, by the proper valuation of carbon that contributes to rising emissions, but can also be stored and sequestered in areas rich in land and forest.
Now, moving over to Kenya, the death toll in an investigation linked to a Kenyan cult that practiced starvation to meet Jesus Christ has exceeded 400 after 12 more bodies were found on Monday, a senior official said. According to the Coast Regional Commissioner, the total death toll stands at 403. This comes during the latest round of exhumations in the Shakahola forest, where cult leader Paul Ntinge Mackenzie allegedly urged followers to starve to death. The exhumation will continue on Tuesday as investigators search for more graves in the forest. The first victims, some dead, others alive but weakened and emaciated, were discovered on the 13th of April. According to government autopsies, starvation appears to have been the main cause of death, although some victims, including children, were strangled, beaten, or suffocated.
In our next story, Russia's announcement that it was withdrawing from a pact that allowed Ukrainian grains to leave Black Sea port sent a shiver through some of the world's poorest countries, many of which are already reeling from inflation, conflict shocks, and conflict. Now, the Black Sea grains deal brokered by the United Nations and Turkey in July 2022 helped bring down global food prices and allowed aid agencies to access hundreds of thousands of tons of food at a time of rising needs and scarce funding. Somalia, where failed rains for the past 3 years and relentless conflict between state forces and Islamist militants have forced millions to flee their homes, has been one of the biggest beneficiaries of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. It received 84,000 tons of wheat from Ukraine in 2022, up from 31,000 tons in 2021, according to UN trade data, as donors stepped up assistance to fend off a looming famine in certain areas. The Kremlin said on Monday that Russia was quitting the pact because its demands to improve its own grain and fertilizer exports had not been met.
Now getting into our next story, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune began a state visit to China on Monday with both economic and diplomatic priorities as the North African nation seeks to become less dependent on gas and raise its global profile. The visit follows Tebboune's trip last month to Russia, a long-time military partner and supplier, although Algeria has remained officially neutral in Moscow's war in Ukraine. Tebboune spent 2 days in Qatar before landing in Beijing on Monday. A large delegation accompanied Mr. Tebboune to China, which testifies to a desire to deepen cooperation beyond the economy. Tebboune is also seeking concrete support for Algeria's membership of BRICS, an economic bloc that includes China and Russia, as well as Brazil, India and South Africa, and which is organizing a summit next month. The collective was founded in 2009 when member countries were seen as the potential engine of future global economic growth. BRICS membership has become a diplomatic priority for Algeria with the upheaval in the global economy, particularly due to the war in Ukraine. During his visit to Russia in June, Mr. Tebboune offered to help mediate the conflict.
Wrapping up our top stories, the first tranche of the African Union Peace Fund has been allocated to the East African community for its standby force in the eastern parts of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This was announced by Bongele Adeyoye, the AU's Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, at the end of the AU Summit's midterm review in Nairobi, Kenya on Sunday. The DRC is due for elections in December this year, and instability in the east could have negative effects on the smooth running of the polls. About 36 million rands from the AU is being dispersed for the first time to the East African Community Regional Force, which is based in Eastern DRC. He added the funding of the EAC was a sign the AU was serious about fostering peace, and the act was a combined effort that displays African ownership. The Peace Fund covers operational activities, mediation and preventative diplomacy, institutional capacity, and peace support operations of the AU.
Now in Zambia, authorities are on high alert following reports that there's about $2 million worth of counterfeit notes on the market. We'll be back after this short break as we get into Zambian news with Mike Sichula.
To another exciting episode of Irongo Talk. We bring jou
Is die weer en vertel ook vir julle waar die vis heel moontlik kan byt.
Now moving over to Zambia, like I highlighted earlier, authorities are on high alert following reports that there's about $2 million worth of counterfeit notes on the market. Here to give us the story and more, Mr. Mike Sichula. Good morning, Mr. Sichula.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
All right, yes, please take us through that first story.
Yes, so far the Drug Enforcement Commission has arrested 3 people for being in possession of over 390 counterfeit dollars. So this was announced by DEC Director General Nason Banda, who said this when he announced the seizure of movable properties worth over 10 million kwacha. So these counterfeit dollars are on the market, according to him. And from what they have managed to seize so far, which is close to 400 United States dollars counterfeit notes, there is about $2 million according to what he said. And he has therefore urged members of the public to be on high alert and to also trade with registered bureau de charge in order not to lose their monies. So this situation is being the people that have been arrested, there is one Congolese and some Zambians, and it seems to be like a network that has gone rampage on the market, selling these counterfeit notes. However, the good message is that according to the body that represents Bureau de Charge, they are saying any counterfeit notes that can come through their members can be detected. But the only challenge is that those that are trading on counterfeit notes on the black market are the ones who are at high risk.
Now, in a related report, police in Lusaka have detained a paramilitary officer for being drunk while on duty. Can you expand on this?
Quite an embarrassing story, because Constable Emmanuel Mukenda got drunk and failed to secure the firearm. As you can see from that video, he is lying hopeless there, and the firearm, he couldn't secure the firearm. So according to the police public relations manager, Mr. Ray Hamonga, the officer who in question was reported to the police by a cash-in-transit security officer, Matthews Dakat, 42, who also is a crew commander for G4 security. So you can imagine a police officer with a dangerous firearm getting drunk on duty and failing to secure a firearm. So he's been detained by the police, and he's supposed to undergo a disciplinary hearing, and is most likely going to be suspended. The worst case scenario, he could be dismissed from the police service. And these are some of the cases that the police have been grappling with in terms of dangerous firearms landing in people who are not supposed to have those firearms because of such recklessness by a police officer like Constable Emmanuel Mukanda.
I mean, that is quite despicable. Now, last week, Mr. Sishila, we did briefly highlight excuse me, on the goalkeeper, first choice goalkeeper for the Copper Queens, Hazel Nali, who got injured and will not be participating in the World Cup. But now in an update, we understand that she will stay on with the team at the Women's World Cup tournament. Please tell us about this.
Yes, this is about team building. As you may be aware, Hazel Nali has been with the Copper Queens for close to more than 5 years. And in the last 3 years, she's been consistent. And she was the one who converted a spot kick that made Zambia qualify to the World Cup and win a bronze medal during the women's tournament in Morocco. So government has agreed with the Football Association of Zambia to allow Nali to stay at the Women's World Cup tournament. This was revealed by Youth and Sports Minister Elvis Nkandu, says that government will take full responsibility for Hazel Nali's stay there. That is in terms of accommodation and other issues that she may need. Then the good news as well is that Hazel Nali could undergo surgery this week because the Zambians in Australia have organized a surgeon who can conduct the operation. So she is likely to go under the knife on the 26th of July 2023, just there in Australia, and she'll be monitored by the Zambian medics as well as the medics that have been identified in Australia.
Now, last but not least, the government is expected to use the upcoming Legends of Golf event to boost tourism arrivals in Zambia. Can you get into this?
Yes, Zambia will host over 80 local and international golfers in the Legends Golf Tournament, which is a subsidiary of the PGA Tour. So, Tourism Minister Rodney Sikamba says government will use the Legends Golf Tournament to boost its target of increasing the number of tourists to about 1.5 million before the end of this year. So Zambia has set a target of attracting that number of tourists this year. So one of those initiatives that the government is using is hosting of these events, the Legends of Golf. And if you recall, just some months ago, Zambia hosted the Legends of Barcelona, and that was used as a catalyst to increase tourism arrivals. So, the local organizing committee managing director Luyando Yoyo has told the media that in an interview that the tour will be another event that will be hosted in line with the Barcelona Legends and Zambia's 2012 African winning tournament. Zambia has built a number of infrastructure in terms of good hotels, and also the golf course that will be used is one of those that has been undergone a number of maintenance, and it is of high standard to host such an event.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Sichila, for giving us an update on all the latest news on the ground in Zambia.
Thank you very much, Africa. Good morning.
Now let's take a look at the weather predictions for Southern Africa before we return with our economic news.
Let's take a look at the economic news. In a surprise announcement, Eskom said that the utility and its former Chief of Operating Officer, Jan Oberholzer, would part ways by mutual agreement. Last month, Eskom confirmed that it had signed a 2-year contract with Oberholzer to oversee key projects at a coal-fired power station, Kusile, and nuclear power plant, Kuberg. Oberholzer officially retired in April this year, with the board saying it planned to scrap the position of CEO upon his departure. His retirement followed the continuous exit of former Chief Executive Officer Andre de Ruyter. Eskom's acting group CEO Khalib Kasim said he had appointed Oberholzer on a contract basis to oversee the completion of the critical projects at Kusile and Kuberg. Earlier on Monday, Minister of Electricity Kogesenso Ramakopa said he was very worried that the Kuberg refurbishment had fallen behind schedule.
Now, the European Union wishes to negotiate with Egypt and Morocco partnerships similar to the one it has just concluded with Tunisia, relating in particular to the fight against irregular immigration, a European source said on Monday. The EU and Tunisia signed a memorandum of understanding in Tunis on Sunday for a comprehensive strategic partnership, which also concerns the country's economic development and renewable energies. On the migratory aspect, it provides the European Union aid of 105 million euros intended to prevent the departure of migrant boats to the EU from the Tunisian coast and to fight against smugglers, but also to facilitate the return to this country of Tunisians who are in an irregular situation in the EU, as well as the return from Tunisia to the countries of origin of migrants from sub-Saharan Africa. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she wanted the partnership to be a model for future agreements with countries in the region.
Up next is your economic indicators before we get into sports news.
Good day, everyone. Time for international sports news, and starting off with rugby news. First, it is France 2023, the Rugby World Cup that starts in September. And news from the Rugby World Cup is that Johnny Sexton, the fly-off of Ireland, he's been suspended for 3 games, and that is leading up to the World Cup. And the reason for that is verbal misconduct that was towards match officials. That was after the loss of Leinster against La Rochelle. That was in the Champions League, or the Heineken Champions Cup final in May this year. So he's got a 3-match ban. That means that the 3 warm-up games that Ireland will play before the World Cup will be sufficient for him to play again in the first game, the opening game of Ireland's Rugby World Cup campaign. They play on 9 September, their opening game against Romania. A more severe punishment was expected for Johnny Sexton. He's 38 years old, and the rugby world at the moment is still divided on that. Johnny Sexton also indicated that after this year's World Cup that he will retire. Moving on to tennis news, and after Wimbledon was completed, it is good news for Marketa van der Sova. She is the new women's Wimbledon finalist winner for 2023. A great story, as she is the first unseeded player in history to win the tournament, and it's also reflected now on the world rankings. She moves up 32 places, and she is now moved up from 42 to number 10 in the world. That's the new world rankings that came out. So great performance by Marketa van der Sova. She beat Ons Jabeur of Tunisia in the final by 6-4 and 6-4. The current world number 1 in the women's division is still Iga Swiatek of Poland. Swiatek she got to the quarterfinals of Wimbledon this year, but remained number 1 in the world. Another player that made lots of progress on the world rankings is Elina Svitolina. She is from the Ukraine. She was also unseeded in the tournament and played in the semi-finals, and she lost to Marketa van der Sova. And it's Elina Svitolina that also moves up from number 76 in the world to number 27 in the world. That's up 49 positions. The number 1 men's player still in the world is Carlos Alcaraz, and that he confirmed by winning the men's Wimbledon final against Novak Djokovic, and that was a tough 5-setter, but Carlos Alcaraz remained number 1 in the world. That was his second major win after winning also the US Open in 2022. And continuing international sports news with athletics news, it's results from the Diamond League Silesia event that was in Poland. Good result for Southern African interest. It was Wade van Niekerk of South Africa winning the 400 meters in 44.08 seconds. That's his best 400 meters time in 7 years since his knee injury. He's the gold medalist in the 2016 Olympic Games, and then he ran a world record 43.03 seconds. Also a good 100 meters result for South African Akani Sambini, and he won the 100 meters in a time of 9.97 seconds, and he beat the world champion Fred Curley in a photo finish, Curley in a time of 9.98 seconds in second position.
You're still with Africa Good Morning. If you're just joining us, here are the news highlights. The death toll in an investigation linked to a Kenyan cult rises to over 400. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune began a state visit to China on Monday. Jan Oberholzer to part ways by mutual agreement with Eskom.
And with that, we've come to the end of our broadcast. Do remember that you can catch Africa Good Morning tomorrow, same time, same place. From me, Glenora Shipura.
And me, Diana Master, we wish you a lovely Tuesday ahead.